We're asked to solve this one. We're trying to find out what the value of v is. This is a rational equation, and we've got a lot of v's kind of all over the place. And this one's fairly complicated, so I wanted to go through this one and see if we can hopefully clarify it just a little bit on the process and how to do it anyway. Well, I'm looking here. The very first thing that we want to try to do in these type of rational equations is to try to determine what the lowest common denominator is. And we've got an x plus 5 on this side and on this side. This one here is a quadratic expression. And so what we need to do first is to factor this one. Now, when we factor this one, we need two numbers that multiply together to give us 15, but add together to give us 8. So two numbers that multiply together to give us 15 would be 5 and 3, and those two add together to give us 8. So those are my factors. So it's going to be v plus 8 and v plus 5 and v plus 3. So remember, 5 times 3 gives us 15, and 5 plus 3 gives us 8. So there's my factored form. That's the only thing I really changed here. But by factoring this, I'm not really going to deal with anything that's on the top just yet, just what's on the bottom. By factoring this, it enables me to see what my lowest common denominator is. So I've got v plus 5, all of those have that, and this one has a v plus 3. So my lowest common denominator in this case is going to be v plus 5 times v plus 3. Okay, now there are a couple different methods we can do here, but the easiest one in my opinion is to go ahead and multiply each one of these three by this entire lowest common denominator. In doing so, it will eliminate our fractions here. We won't have denominators on any of these. So I'm going to multiply this part here by this lowest common denominator, multiply this middle part by the lowest common denominator, and this last part as well. So let me bring that in. I'll do that. I'm going to put those in, let's see, I'll put those in blue just to make it a little bit easier to try to determine which one is the lowest common denominator. So here they are. And you notice I'm multiplying each of those, and if you want to think about multiplying those on the top, that's fine. That's indeed what you are doing. Alright, so we've got this, and notice how I leave these in factored form. It's going to be easier for the next step in which we start crossing these off. We're going to get rid of these fractions here. Okay, so I leave all these alone. Notice I put this one in parentheses. That's the proper way to do it. But we'll go through here. I see I have a v plus 5 on top and on bottom here, so I can go ahead and cross those off. Now, and that's all that I have there, so I'm left with this v plus 3 times v minus 5. Over here in this middle one, I have a v plus 5 on top and bottom. I can cross that one off as well. I also have a v plus 3 on top and bottom. I can cross those off. As long as you're crossing off the entire entity, you're okay there. The entire entity meaning the part inside of the parentheses. Alright, and then the last part I have a v plus 5 on top and bottom. I can cross those off. Now I've got to kind of see what I'm left with here. And I'm left with v plus 3 times v plus 5. I've got that right here. Equals this, I'm just left with the v squared is all, and then over here I'm left with the v plus 3 times 1. Well, v plus 3, anything times 1 really, it's just whatever the other thing is. So v plus 3 times 1 is just v plus 3. So now I'm going to simplify it just a little bit further. I'm going to go ahead and multiply these two together, and you can use the FOIL method, you can use the box method, any of those work just fine. If I multiply both of those two together, I end up with v squared minus 2v plus, or excuse me, negative 15, minus 15. Equals v squared, and then here's just my v plus 3. I multiplied that by 1, which is just v plus 3. Alright, now I have a quadratic expression on this side and on the right side as well. I need to get everything onto one side. Let's start with the v squareds. So I'm going to subtract v squared from the right hand side, and I'm going to move it over to the left hand side. When I do that, I've got a v squared minus v squared is 0, and v squared minus v squared is 0, so I actually ended up crossing off those v squareds on both sides. So that worked out pretty nice. What I'm left with is negative 2v minus 15 is equal to v plus 3. Now what we need to do is get all of the v's on one side. You could move this v to this side or move this one to that side. It really doesn't matter. Both sides will get you the right answer. I chose to just remove this v. So that gives me minus v on both sides. 2v minus v gives me negative 3v minus 15 equals 3. Now I need to move my 15 onto the other side. I add 15. I end up with negative 3v equals 18. And I run out of room here on the bottom, but basically you're going to divide both sides by negative 3. Then you find out that v equals negative 6. Now what you want to do here is go ahead and plug this back into each one of these v's to make sure that it's going to work. And the biggest thing is to make sure that you're not going to have a 0 on the bottom. That's usually what happens 80% of the time if it doesn't work. So if I type in negative 6 plus 5, that doesn't give me a 0. I'm okay there. Negative 6 plus 5 again doesn't give me a 0. This gives me 36 plus 48. excuse me, 36 minus 48 plus 15 does not give me 0, so I'm okay. So v equals negative 6 is indeed the answer in this case.